Today on Locked On Red Wings, what to make of Yzerman's comments in Grand Rapids, and does Sanderson's extension impact the Red Wings?
You're Locked On Red Wings, your daily podcast on the Detroit Red Wings, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to the Locked On Red Wings podcast. We are your hosts, Brian Fisher and Scotty Bentley. I'm a podcast producer for the daily JAWWJ News Radio podcast, while Scotty's host over at Locked On Tigers, as well as a freelance journalist for the Detroit News. And today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn to get started. They are official sportsbook of Locked On.
Have
Scotty,
you seen one of their offers? They have, with football season, it's in one of the reads. I'm sure we'll talk about it at some point, but like they have a thing where if you like sign up for FanDuel and like $5, you get like $100 something off of NFL Sunday Ticket on YouTube TV.
Oh,
like,
wow. That's actually
yeah, dude. Like that's again, it's in one of the reads. If we have that today, I don't know, but like that's a pretty crazy cool offer there. So
yeah, absolutely. Scotty, happy debut of the NFL season. Although by the time people hear this, everyone's
I'm
gonna know.
so nervous, dude. I'm so full disclosure, we're recording this at 4 p.m. Thursday afternoon. So about 4 hours, little more than 4 hours before game time. And I am absolutely terrified. I had to walk off my anxiety already today. I'm going to have to do it again, I'm sure. Like I'm so terrified.
So by the
in
end
a good way. It's good. Like we're never terrified because we just expect to suck always. So like it's nice, but I am terrified.
By the end of today, we'll know if it is either so over or so back for the Detroit Lions.
Absolutely. And if we bounce back and win in week 2, it will be back regardless of what happened today. So it's okay.
So on today's episode, guys, Steve Yzerman held about a 17-minute, I wouldn't say press conference. He was just in Grand Rapids with
media availability is the term.
Thank you. Media availability with the West Michigan Sports Commission. And journalists asked him questions and he answered them. And I'm not going to lie, he didn't say anything like groundbreaking. At this point, he kind of knows the routine. He knows what kind of questions he's going to be asked and he knows how to answer them. That being said, we still had a couple things that I still had a couple things I wrote down and we're going to talk about, kind of just riff about what we thought about what he said. And also, Jake Sanderson of the Ottawa Senators signed an 8-by-8-year deal with the Senators. And, we've talked several times as young players sign new contracts about how that could impact a potential contract for Moritz, Cider, and Lucas Raymond. And so we're going to talk about that again. And then if there's any time left, we'll just finish out the week with a how do you feel about it Friday before rolling into a weekend. So, Scotty, without further ado, Yzerman spoke at a media availability with the West Michigan Sports Commission. And the first thing that stood out to me was when he was asked if this year is, and I'm paraphrasing here, I don't have the direct quotes in front of me, but basically, is this year like a playoffs or bust? And he pointed out that no year is playoffs or bust. He's not trying to build a team for the playoffs. He's trying to build a team to win championships. And, that's exactly in line with everything he has ever said.
Very on
brand. So it's not very on brand. It's nothing groundbreaking, but he's right when he says that. I mean, and we're sitting here, as fans, we would just be happy with making the playoffs right now, but Yzerman can't be, right? Like his job as general manager is for the Red Wings to win Stanley Cup. So he can't be happy with just winning Stanley Cups. Just making the playoffs. He has to win Stanley Cups. Sorry, correct myself there. He has to win Stanley Cups.
The bar better be higher than racing Stanley Cups.
He's got to win a Super Bowl too, man. Like he's got a cross championship.
The Detroit Red Wings playing in the Super Bowl, or else this is a failure.
And so, like, hearing him say that, it's like, okay, that again, it's just bog standard stuff. But while we as fans are like, we'd settle for playoffs this year, it's nice to, I guess, hear that the biggest takeaway is just like he's in line and being consistent with everything he's ever said.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that That is a reassuring thing to hear, and for some fans a frustrating thing at the same time. Like there are, that's important, and that's like, to lay the groundwork and the foundation to building like a healthy, sustainable product. Like that's kind of I shouldn't say any, like the Coyotes exist, but like almost any team could just like completely empty the tank on assets and go all in for 1 year and make the playoffs, right? Like there's probably 28 teams in the NHL that could just, you know what, forget it. We're gonna go all the way up to the limit in cap. We're gonna trade all of our picks to the future, and we're gonna just get a bunch of players together and have the talent to try to, go to the playoffs this one season. But building a sustainable product is takes a lot more time and is a lot more difficult. And so I think that it's not like a groundbreaking thing, like you said. It's very much in line and on brand for what he's done his entire tenure here and what he's said his entire tenure here. But it is interesting to think of like, oh, if the Wings made the playoffs and got bounced in the first round, would Yzerman really feel no differently than if the Wings got 88 points and missed the playoffs? Like, would he view that as like the same? You know what I mean? Like that's kind of the how my brain like thinks about that stuff. But at the end of the day, it's GM speak as well. So
yeah, I mean, I think the way he views it is the team making the team would have gotten better, and that's something he talked about as well. They asked him about the offseason, and he goes, he thinks the team took a step forward, and it damn well better have, considering as much money as he spent in the offseason. And that was his goal, right? He wanted to make the team more competitive, make the team better, because they're clearly not going to get any more help in the draft. They never got any help in the draft. So, he's trying to do this in a more roundabout way. So yeah, he thinks the team took a step forward this offseason. I think most people would agree. The one big problem, and this is me speaking, not Yzerman speaking, one big problem with that is that the Atlantic Division sucks. And sucks in the way that it's very, very good. I just hate this division so much. I mean, with the rise of the Senators and the Sabres alongside the Red Wings, and the fact that, Boston, Florida, Toronto, and Tampa are all going to be in the mix very much the same. The team took a step forward, but man, is it going to be enough? But that's a conversation we're going to be having all the way up until the season's actually.
We're probably
happening.
Looking way too much into one quote in September.
Oh no, and I mean, this is also September talk, right?
Yeah.
Like this is the dead of the offseason, right before things start ramping up. So we're talking about comments he made at a media availability that he's basically said before. He did say, and this is, I think there's a little bit to this. And again, GM speak, don't trust anything that ever comes out of Yzerman's mouth.
He's a liar.
He's a liar in the best of ways. We mean that with love. It's an endearing thing. You want that out of your GM. You don't want him to show his cards, but he's a liar. He said that he doesn't foresee the Red Wings making any more signings this offseason unless it's like a PTO. That's the only way he would see them signing anybody at this juncture. So to all our Patrick Kane stands out there, sorry, probably not going to happen. Wasn't going to happen regardless, unless it was like after he got healthy around like New Year's trade deadline, whenever he gets back.
We don't need to go down that rabbit hole again, but I still think that timing of everything makes it like a lot more difficult than just like, oh yeah, let's add a guy who's going to get 50 for us this year. Like that, the timing just doesn't really make sense for the Wings.
I am still seeing posts on Facebook where it's like Patrick Kane has dictated his new team, where Patrick Kane wants to reunite with this team or this player. Patrick Kane wants to go to this surprise. And I'm like, oh my God, make it stop. And like, I don't even interact with the posts.
Not going
so
to.
Like, why is the algorithm still feeding me it? Like I make a point to ignore it and move on.
You're using Facebook, man. I don't know.
That is my own fault. That is my own fault. Facebook is just, it's a nonstop roll of suggested posts. It's not even like your timeline anymore. Like people you're friends with, you don't even see posts from them. It's just, this is suggested. This is suggested. I'm just like, this is stupid is what it is.
Brian reposting memes. That's what Facebook is.
That is primarily what I use Facebook for. I will admit, reposting memes is like the best usage of that app. Anyways, my bosses love it. I'm not gonna lie. I have my bosses routinely comment on them, or like will like I get in the office and be like, that meme you shared yesterday was so funny. So I'm like, all right, cool. You know,
I mean, we'll take it.
I don't share the dicey ones anymore. You know,
It's probably smart.
I keep it PG. All right, Scotty. Let's take a quick break after that, and I just hit the mic arm just now, so I hope that didn't get heard. When we come back, we'll wrap up any remaining thoughts. Basically, he had a comment on Edvinsson, which I think is pertinent, probably the most pertinent thing he said. And then we'll move on to talking about the Jake Sanderson extension. But first, got to talk to you guys today about FanDuel. Football season is about to kick off. By the time you're listening to this, has kicked off, and FanDuel is giving you the chance to win all season long. Because right now, when you bet on a Super Bowl winner, you can get bonus bets every time they win in the regular season. So if you're picking the Lions to win the Super Bowl, you'll get bonus bets for every victory. You can use bonus bets on spreads, player props, over-unders, and more. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and start earning bonus bets with America's #1 sportsbook. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon. Segment 2, Locked On Red Wings podcast. Scotty and I are talking about Yzerman's comments. He was asked about Simon Edvinsson and where he was progressing. He said that Edvinsson has stayed in North America, is skating, is progressing on track, will not be ready for training camp, but could be ready by the start of the season. And, you know, I don't want to look too far into that comment because when the way he said it, and you guys would have to go back and listen to it for exactly how he said it, but the way he said it made me think like, he'll be ready for the start of the season with the Red Wings. And I was like, wait a second. No, there's no way that's possible. But it is good to hear that Edvinsson is on track and should be ready, kind of like Andrew Kopp was last year, to start playing once the season starts. More than likely, like 99% chance with Grand Rapids.
I don't see. There's so many reasons as to why it's not going to be in Detroit. One is just like we have 7 NHL defensemen at the moment, but even on top of that, like you bring up Kopp, you know, Kopp was ready and then like struggled at the beginning. They're not going to want Edvinsson to come back from injury and immediately just be in the NHL if he has the ability to kind of ease his way back into it in Grand Rapids. And then just straight up, you know, even at his best, is he ready to be one of those 7 NHL defensemen more so than the 7 that we currently have on the roster? So yeah, there's a lot of factors as to why I'm pretty much certain it's in GR, but I mean, that's good to hear. And, you know, the more playing time he gets down in Grand Rapids, the better, right? The sooner that he is back to 100% and lighting up that league, the better. I want to have a difficult conversation about that at some point. Like, yes. I want to be in a position where you and I have to like get in an argument in like November or December about like, is Simon Edvinsson ready to be at the NHL level? Like I want him to force the fan base's hand, the front office's hand, the team's hand. Like I want, you know, like Petrie and Mata to like start sweating and like realize that he's like right, you know, behind them. Like I want that to happen as soon as possible. And so that starts obviously with him being healthy as soon as possible. So yeah, no training camp, but because it's in GR anyway, I'm pretty comfortable with him. You know, if he's ready within the first couple of games of the season there, I think that's a good sign.
Yeah. I mean, I completely agree with you. I don't feel the need to kind of like beat the dead horse. Just, I'm glad that he's on track to be ready for the start of the season. And, you know, I hope that he proves himself worthy of the NHL level sooner rather than later.
Right.
So there it is. Scotty, let's move on now. Jake Sanderson of the Ottawa Senators signed a shiny new contract that is set to start at the expiration of his current deal, which will be at the end of this year. It is 8 years, $8.05 million per year. And the reason why this is important is because he has quite literally 1 year at the NHL level. He played 77 games with the Senators last year and registered 32 points, 4 goals, 28 assists. And he is a left side defenseman, 21 years old. That is a very similar situation to a young Moritz Seider is in, you know, with the exception of Moritz Seider playing on the right side. We've had this conversation several times every time a young guy signs a new contract. It was Tim Stützle last year, and then Josh Norris signed, and Ottawa and Pierre Dorian are very aggressive with their young players in that, you know, they gamble on them early sign them to long-term extensions early in the hope that after their breakout rookie seasons, they continue to be just as dominant as they were. Because if they are, that contract will become a steal by the second half of that deal. With the cap going up, that money they're paying these guys who they hope are going to develop into superstars is going to be an absolute highway robbery. And so we have this conversation every time one of these guys, not just Ottawa Senators, but their Pierre Dorian's the one who does it constantly, is should the Red Wings follow suit? You know, Moritz, Seider, and Lucas Raymond are both entering the final year of their entry-level contracts. Granted, they're both going to be RFAs, so the Red Wings still hold a lot of the cards, a lot of the power over both of these guys. But should the Red Wings sign these guys to long-term extensions? That's the question. Like, would it be smart? Do we believe that Raymond and Seider are so for real that they should earn 8-year deals now? Because then that'll give us cap, assuming they pan out, that'll give us cap relief, in 4 years when the Red Wings roster is presumably much better.
Right. Yeah. I think it's interesting because this is kind of a pattern throughout all of Detroit sports at the moment. The Pistons are an interesting spot. Like, their players are either really, really young or like Cade got hurt last year, and football is just kind of a different sport in general. You don't really lock up people long-term because it's such a physical sport and injuries happen. But obviously I do this, and then I host the Tigers show as well. And this is almost copy and paste to something that I get asked almost every single day about, like, Green specifically, but like Green, Torkelson, Carpenter, whatever. Like, why are we not extending them? And in hockey and baseball, it's just so weird because there is, like hockey, you have RFA and arbitration. In baseball, you have, 6 years of service before you can be a free agent and arbitration and whatnot. And so it's not a need to keep them on the roster. It is, to your point, the reason you do it is so that after their RFA or arbitration years are over with, then you're getting them on a discount for you when you overpay them in the first few years. Now, the overpay them is also somewhat of a loose term. You're overpaying them for what they would be given, not necessarily for their value on the ice, which is, again, another reason why teams do it. You can give, some of these guys 8x8 or 7x8 or whatever it ends up being. And, they play at a high enough level where that's worth it as far as their production goes. So it's interesting that's kind of like a lot of other teams are starting to do this. And like the Detroit group is like, oh, we're a little hesitant on it. And I would say, as far as the Wings go, I would be 100% confident and fine doing it with Cider, and I would actually not do it with Lucas Raymond. And a little bit of a like I said, like risk reward with Lucas Raymond, where like Cider we're confident in going forward. Raymond, like, because the second year wasn't quite what we expected the first year, and because there is still arguments about what his ceiling is, like, there's still debate between the fan base about like what is Lucas Raymond's peak, what is his future role on this team. I think the risk reward comes from, if you are a very, very big Lucas Raymond fan, if you are super confident in Raymond hitting his ceiling and hitting his stride, third year, he takes a big step forward, then you would want to sign him now because his value will be at its lowest right now. But that comes with the risk of, if he never ends up really taking that big step forward and becoming what people thought he was going to be in his rookie year, or what people still think he's going to be, then you're, locked in a contract where you're going to be paying him more than you could have, or just straight up more than he's worth for however many years you end up doing it. So, and, if then you don't and you hold out and he does really well his third year this upcoming season, then you're in a position where his value is going to go up, and you know what I mean? You're going to have to pay him more than you would have if you signed him before this year. So it's definitely there's a lot of risk reward, weighing the good and the bad with this whole situation. But I would sign Cider to an 8-year deal tomorrow. Like, I wouldn't even feel bad about it. I would borderline blank check him and just be like, Phil, whatever you want, dude. Like, I just want to make sure you're on the Wings blue line for the next decade. But Raymond, I would probably hold out on.
Yeah, I am with you 100% of their way. And the reason I agree is because, Cider had a slow start to the season, but bounced back phenomenally in the second half and kind of proved himself. Whereas Raymond kind of struggled with inconsistency the entire offseason. And so you kind of need another prove it year from him if you're going to give him that kind of payday. We're going to take another quick break. And when we come back, I'm going to finish up my thoughts on this situation and kind of where I'm coming at it from and where I think Yzerman would come at it from too. So stay tuned to Locked On Red Wings. Segment 3, Locked On Red Wings podcast. We're talking about the possibility of extending Raymond and Seider after Jake Sanderson signed an 8-year extension with the Ottawa Senators, another young stud defenseman getting his payday early. So I think that I agree with you. I think that Seider is, if anyone out of both those guys, is the only one right now who could sniff an 8-year contract extension. And I say that because we know already Steve Yzerman kind of has gone on the record and been like, I don't like giving out 8-year deals. The only reason he gave Larkin an 8-year deal is because he was the captain. He was the centerpiece of the roster that he wants to build around. This is the guy he wants to be here. Like, he is the window. Like, Dylan Larkin is basically your championship window. If you don't win a cup in the 8 years he is here, then you're not winning a cup. And obviously, like, big roster shakeups can happen, and you could trade him and get some phenomenal guys back. Look what the Sabres did in trading Eichel away and, getting phenomenal guys back. And then the breakout season that Tage Thompson had after he got acquired for O'Reilly. Like, things can happen, and you never know. But the idea as of right now is your window is Dylan Larkin. So the only reason he gave Larkin that long-ass contract is because that's the guy you want to be here for 8 whole years. I think Seider is in that category, but because Steve Yzerman is kind of so hesitant to give out these long-term contracts, I see the possibility of him getting it at the end of his entry-level contract, but I could also foresee a bridge deal taking him like a 3 or 4 year deal, taking him to the next contract where you will inevitably have to pay him more. But at that point, you have other guys coming off the books. We talk about that rolling salary cap a lot, right? Where the next 2 years, I feel like you're pretty locked up, pretty good. But after that, money starts coming off the books in time for you to give guys that need contract extensions if they need them. So I could also see that because Yzerman is so hesitant to give out those long-term deals. But if he was going to give it to anyone, it would be Seider. Raymond, I don't think would, unless, again, because Yzerman's so hesitant to give out those long-term deals, I don't see it. But unless Raymond has like an 80-point season, I don't see him getting it. I think Yzerman's going to be definitely looking to give him like a 2 or 3 year bridge deal to continue to grow into that. But I definitely foresee before, they hit that UFA period, which is in several years away, them getting locked up long-term, especially Seider. Because I do think Seider has that potential to be elite level. I mean, Seider in his first 2 years outproduced Jake Sanderson, and Jake Sanderson got this 8-year deal. Not to say that because Pierre Dorian gave Sanderson an 8-year deal, right, Yzerman has to give then Seider an 8-year deal, but this is a trend that we're seeing. And Seider, I think, is a better defenseman than Sanderson, not taking anything away from Sanderson. I think Sanderson is a phenomenal the defensive defenseman game is kind of going away. He still had like 30-ish points last year, and that's still good, but he definitely leans more defensive, whereas Moritz Seider is a little bit more two-way in the back end, which is more modern era defenseman. And I look at these two side by side, I'm like, Seider, I think, is the better defenseman of the two. So when it comes to his time to be getting a contract extension, Claude Lemieux is going to be rubbing his hands together going, all right, well, this is what a comparable contract looks like.
Yeah, I agree. And I think your point on Raymond is sound as well, where it's very much like he would have to have a phenomenal year this year. Like he would really have to, have a career year. He would have to have the best, like comfortably the best year of his after this season will be 3-year career for him to be like more in that conversation. Whereas Seider, like even with the slow start last year, like they just took Ben Sherratt off his pair and then he was fine again. Like, you know what I mean? Like it wasn't like there was something like wrong with Seider's game or like, oh, like he just like he's really struggling at this aspect and like, oh, they found a hole in his game or a weakness. Like, no, they just, took Ben Sherratt off the top pair and he was fine again. So I think that, Yeah, I'm with you. I feel like I'm just going to start circling the wagons here and just start saying the same thing over and over again. But yeah, I think Seider definitely has more of an opportunity and more of a chance to, I guess I should say, to get that long-term deal. I wouldn't expect either anytime like super soon, again, just because of like the way Yzerman is. But it wouldn't shock me if Seider got a long-term deal after this year. I think 3 years is enough of a sample size where if he's really good and proves that he's going to be your best defenseman for the next decade, that you feel pretty good about giving him that with a 3-year sample size. Whereas Raymond, yeah, I think Raymond's Red Wings tenure is probably going to be filled with 3 to 5 year deals.
Yeah, up until he proves that he needs that 8-year deal. Yeah, I'm with you. To put the nail in the coffin, I could see it with Seider, but with Raymond, I think it's going to be a few bridge deals right there.
Yeah.
All right. So technically, we could end the show now, but we very rarely have episodes that go under 30 minutes, with the exception of I think Wednesday we were like 28. Scotty, how do you feel about the Detroit Lions? Do you think this is the year?
Oh man, I hate that question so much. I've been heard so many times. We all have, man. We've all been scarred. We've all been, trained pretty much not to trust, just conditioned not to trust this team. I will say that this year does, I think pretty objectively feel different. And that doesn't mean that I'm guaranteeing success or anything, but I think the people in charge and the powers up top are certainly different than anything I've felt in my lifetime. So we'll see. It's the first time in my entire life that I was born in the late 90s. It's the first time in my entire life that we have gone into a season and the expectation is for the Lions to win their division. That is the first time that has ever been like a preseason expectation in my entire life. So, terrified is really the word. Pretty effing terrified. I'm very scared because I've been hurt so many times from this team, but I'm very excited in the same breath. I'd much rather be scared about, flopping on our face and not living up to expectations than just have the SOL expectations of, they're going to win 2 to 4 games this year. So, yeah,
I mean, I think up and down the roster, the best team in the NFC North.
Yeah.
But again, anything can happen week in and week out. We've seen that. I think the Bears might be your biggest threat. Because I don't think Minnesota's for real and Green Bay's
You're
going
a Bears
through a rebuild.
guy. See, I think the Packers are still better than the Bears.
You think they're sneaky? You think they're sneaky good?
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe it's more of just like a fear of the Packers thing too. Like even without Rodgers, like it's still, I don't know. So the Packers, they've absolutely dominated us for my whole life. So I don't know. Maybe it's more to do with that. But they play each other week 1, so that'll be kind of interesting.
Yeah. Do you think Spenny T is going to hit that 30 home run marker?
No, I think he probably ends around like 28, but 28 is the most that any Tiger has hit in, I think, since Miguel Cabrera's last 30 home run season, which was 2014, either 2014 or 16, because 15 was the injury year. So, I mean, I'll still take 28. I mean, that's where I think he'll probably end up. And yeah, like I said, that's the highest. I think it was Justin Upton.
Yeah,
had a 28 home run season in 2016, maybe 2017, something like that. So it's been a while since we've had anyone even do that. And it's his, second season.
And he started off really slow. Like, imagine if he was this good the entire season.
Yeah, no, I mean, agreed. He's still got a lot of work to do. Like he still has a lot of holes and a lot of stuff that he's got to fix. But I think if we look at the end of the season and we go, this dude had an OPS over league average. He almost, he flirted with 30 homers in his second full season. I think that's a buildable, like a season to build off of. I think that's something that people can kind of get behind and be a little bit more optimistic about the future than, a lot of people were after his rookie season, which was a disaster. So.
Yeah. You got any questions for me?
Well, I'm glad you answered the Lions one because I did want to know your opinion on that. How do you feel about the Legend of Zelda game you played all day on Labor Day?
It's great. It's honestly, I think it is better than Breath of the Wild. I like the abilities in the new one
For
much
sure,
better.
I know
Yes. Yeah, I've been enjoying it. I've beaten one of the 4. There's like 4 regions you have to explore before you can like move on. I beat the region that had like the giant ice centipede with the flying bird people. This is really the Ritos, I believe they're called. I've
Yeah.
seen Breath of the Wild was the first Legend of Zelda game I actually ever played. So I know
For
very
sure.
little about the lore. But I remember enjoying the first one, so I'm playing the sequel, Tears of the Kingdom, and it's been great.
Awesome. I knew all those words. I'm right there with you.
Yeah. So, all right, Scotty. I guess we'll roll on into the weekend then.
I guess, yeah. I don't think there's really anything else.
A nice low key Friday episode before it all starts next week. Prospect tournament starts next Thursday.
Well, really from then on out. I mean, we're guns blazing, man. Because like prospect tourney starts next weekend, and then mini camp and training camp, and then preseason, and that's kind of like the start of the symbol for the start of the season. There is kind of the prospects tourney.
Yeah, and we go into 5 episodes a week, not next week, but the week after. So we have one more week of 3, and then you guys get us 5 days a week. So we're praying
5, baby.
We're praying for big news out of these prospect tournaments and whatnot. So
yes,
but we will deliver you guys content nonetheless. So stay tuned for that. Scotty, final thoughts.
We ball, baby.
We ball. We'll be back with a new episode on. Well, I don't know. We'll find out. I'm out of town this weekend. You'll get 3 episodes next week, regardless. Same time,
figure it out.
same place. To your team every day.
Every day.